This video, we're going to cover real quick Norwegian Cruise Lines. I think some of the two cruise lines that you'll want to pay attention to are going to be CCL, Carnival Cruise. The one that I am particularly in, I was originally in AAL. I sold it to focus a little bit more on Norwegian, but you could see both of them moving to the upside. RCL, of course, a little bit more expensive for many investors, but for those who are looking for some upside potential over the next coming months, you might see a nice healthy rise in both of these stocks. Now, first we're going to touch on, we saw a recent pullback in Norwegian. And it should not surprise you. There was some news that came out that Norwegian was going to be suspending cruises all the way until, I believe, the end of June. These are two Motley Fool articles. I will link them both in the description. You can choose which one you are in more favor of paying attention to. But the one I'm going to focus on is the one that I am in, which is Norwegian Cruise Line. So Norwegian, we saw, had a pullback, a very strong pullback from $34. We saw a huge engulfing candle. Eventually the stock basically came right back up to 29s, where 29s became your area of resistance. It bounced off of 29s, and as you can see right here, even though the stock came all the way down to 27s, which was another area of resistance, that was another area that, well, eventually became resistance and then support, right? So you can basically see the levels of the stock between 26, 29s, and then now 34s, and we are bouncing again off 29s. We had an intraday sell off to almost 20 to 26, and then the stock closed all the way up very close to 29s, and now we're basically meandering back and forth. There was some news, like I said, that according to JP Morgan said that Norwegian over the next for the end of the year will be trading at $36, right? So from where we were at the time, just say $30, a move to 36 would bring you about 20% to the upside. But what caused Norwegian to pull back was the news that it was going to be suspending till June. The other two, RCL and CCL, I believe suspended until May. You can check them both here. This was covered by the Motley Fool. There's two different articles. You can research which one you like better, as I said before. Now, going back to the chart, the reason that we saw a pullback from 34 is there's one technical indicator right here where you can see the stock basically came to 34s, closed above, and then of course gapped down, rallied, and then eventually sold off. But looking a little bit further, right, we're going to look at the big picture. So going all the way back into 2014, right, you can come all the way back here. You can see for the most part the stock could not maintain above $34. You should see that here we did bounce a couple of times, and eventually the stock fell all the way back down, bounced it, came all the way to 34s, sold off, gapped up, sold all the way off, and then you see finally where the stock was able to hold because volume started to come in, right? So you can see the volume indicator is right over here, and so you'll see there was a huge, most of the time this stock traded like in the low Ks. Some days it had 1 million shares, but for the most part it stuck to about 500,000 shares. It was 1.5, 700, 600, etc. Then you had a huge, almost 6.6 million share day, and eventually the stock slid off. And then eventually you start to see the buyers start to come in. We see a retest right here of 34s with about 800K to the downside, and then 300K, and then the buyers start to step into the millions, right? As you can see, we see much higher days, and typically that are more in the millions, which eventually led Norwegian to trade all the way to the upside. Then eventually we look back here right here, we see another move to the downside, just shy, right? This was during 2016. We see a collapse in the industry all the way back down to 34s, bounces off 34s, tries to retest, still falls short, and then eventually the stock comes all the way back down. So this is why Norwegian, more than likely in my opinion, fell short. We came up to a resistance, a narrative comes out about what drives the stock, what drove the stock down. More than likely it was just an area of resistance. Some news come out, the news gets attributed to why the stock pulled back. But the good news is that it's an opportunity to be able to buy. We could see Norwegian trade higher, as the article points out. Let's see here, I think it's in this one, where they're talking about that of course prices are going to rise. people have a bit more money. People have been saving and not spending. You have stimulus checks going out. And so it makes the point here. It says for every 5% that they are going to raise ticket prices, for every 5% rise in ticket prices, the forecast is roughly 15% equity increase in the stock. So far, so good. But of course, what drove the stock down, according to the article, is that it would be suspending all voyages across its several brands through June of 2021. But of course, it goes on to say that while you're going to see more people getting vaccinated, I believe America is vaccinating like 2 million a day. So by the time June rolls around, we could see the government, which is basically what they're looking for. They're looking for guidelines, right? Which is just basically, we're waiting for the government to give us the blessing so that they'll step out of the way so we can start making money, right? And as for investors, this is what we want to pay attention to. Just like I said with JetBlue, what would cause JetBlue to rise would be a change in the narrative. Previously, the narrative was that they were worried about the government forcing them that everybody had to get a swab before getting on board. And of course, that isn't the case really anymore, that a person has to get swabbed before flying, that it would be a requirement. And so as a result, you basically have to get a swab wherever you're coming back from to come in. But in terms of just being able to get on, for the most part, the airlines didn't require it. The government did not require them to get swabbed and have a negative swab before they left, which of course was good news for the airlines, which is what caused JetBlue to rise. I had already sold out of most of my stock already around 20 and 2050. But moving forward, Norwegian is going to be where I'll be placing a little bit more money. Maybe I have like 80 something shares, 89 at 24.50. I've got 2,200. I've already made a little bit of money in the stock. I didn't have as much as you can see from where I had it before. I had only about 1,400, ended up taking profits and then got into it with a little bit more buying power. I've got a little bit of money. I've got about 10 grand in buying power in my Webull account. So I'll probably add maybe another $600 to $800 worth of the stock, so it'll round me out to about 100 shares overall within the stock. And then I'll add a little bit to, maybe let's say I'll take 50 shares in something like Carnival Cruise. Carnival Cruise on the pullback, we're probably seeing another pullback, as you can see right here. You can see where the stock again held just about here. It looks like around 34s. It did come to as low as $30, and that's basically where we retested and of course fell back. Looking back at the chart, you might see a correlation, as you can see right here, right? We just extend this all the way out, you should be able to see why the stock basically pulled back. Right, so just looking at the chart, you should be able to see, like I said, there's always history in the behind us, where we can look back into the now and see, okay, what happened back then that is going to let me know what's going to happen now, right? So once CCL breaks 30, the next resistance point is going to be around 36, etc. And then we're going to start to trade to the upside, as many of these, again, the money has been printed. There's a lot of credit, I should say, right? There's not a lot of printing that's going, there's a lot of credit that's been given out. And so a lot of these investors are looking for yield. They're either looking for a long-term yield, like for example, either in dividend paying stocks that are paying over 4, 5, or 6%. You're starting to see the bond yields prices start to rise. Like I said, we have a long way to go in terms of where our next area of resistance is in the bond market. On the 10-year, we're more than likely going to hit that 2%. And if we break 2%, we will go and test 3%. And so this is basically the country is basically looking for investors. Nobody wants to sit here on a 0.6% yield and be buying bonds, and especially because at the end of the day, once you turn it in, it's negative. So people are going to be looking for where to put their money, and they're looking for typically areas, and especially now, where stocks are still depressed. We saw the exact same thing in ExxonMobil. You saw the same thing in Wells Fargo. You saw the same thing in the lumber market, right? So the next area is where people are going to shift their money, which is going to be into travel and to cruise lines. So we could see a bit more of a rise in JetBlue. We did get a nice bit of a pullback for those who were able to get in. Like I said back here, let's open up the chart a little bit more. Right, when it hit 17, then it just ripped back up to 19s. That was free money. Same thing here. We're seeing JetBlue hold what looks like about maybe 1950. We see a nice pullback today. Might be a buying opportunity for tomorrow, and maybe you can make more money on the upside, because that's in my opinion, that's where the money is going to be going. Just touching real quick I did talk about Tyson. We are seeing Tyson move from 70 to 77, hit 77s today. We will see Tyson move to the upside. And it's basically where I will be putting my money. Cruise lines, I'll probably adding more to Tyson. I also spoke about Craft retesting those 39s. If we break 39, I will be adding more to my position. Currently in my Webull account, I have 127 shares that I'm holding on to. We'll have to wait and see what the market's going to do moving forward. Always be patient. This is a very good example. I just wanted to talk about this, about fuel cell, right? So I saw fuel cell yesterday, and I saw it meandering at 18. And I kept saying to myself, I should take a short position. I saw it looking kind of weak, and I didn't do it. Didn't pull the trigger. I saw it over a couple of days. Over hit 18, back off, hit 18, back off. Third day, hit 18, and I'm watching it pre-market, and it's showing a little bit above pre-market 18s, and then it starts to sell off. And I was a little too high in my offer. I should say in my where I wanted to short. Came up to like 42s, and I was there at like 1850. And I was thinking, well, if we break above, we've got a little bit of room to race. The NASDAQ was up, market was up, and the 10-year was down, right? So you forget the big picture, right? I'm knowing the big picture that yields are going to go up, which will eventually impact the NASDAQ. Sometimes it's all about patience and waiting for your opportunity. And as you can see, the stock traded all the way down to 1450. That's 4 points, excuse me. I could have clipped out of this position. Sometimes when you see, sometimes you look at something that stares you right at the face, and you're like, this is it. This is that play that you know is going to make you money. Sometimes you have to just be willing to get in and take the risk. Fortunately, I didn't make that choice, and I'm paying for it. I shouldn't be saying I'm paying for it, but I'm looking back on it, wishing I had got into the position. Sometimes it is what it is. I'm going to leave it here, and I'll check you out next time. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back at the end of the week. We'll do an end of the week recap, unless I see something else more important moving forward. But thanks for watching. Feel free to like, of course, comment, and subscribe, and I'll check you out at the end of the week.